My girlfriend and I went to a church barbecue to flex on my ex-wife. Backstory. My ex-wife, female, 44 years old, and I, male, 42 years old, were married for almost 20 years. During that time, she had 4 affairs of varying degrees, including a sexual relationship with a very close friend of mine from our church. I tried to make it work, but after the last emotional affair, I couldn't do it anymore. I filed for divorce just over 2 years ago. We are still going through the divorce, and she's been high conflict the whole time. She's painted herself as a victim, and I now attend a new church, but I still have some friends at my old one I attended there for over 30 years. My petty revenge. My girlfriend GF and I have been dating since January. She's aware of my situation, and we are having fun. I have older kids and she has younger kids. For Labor Day, we both had the day off and wanted to do something fun. I mentioned that my old church does a picnic every year at a park. There are games and activities for the kids and a big potluck barbecue. I told her my ex-wife would likely be there, but it's a big event and we could keep to ourselves. I'd also be able to introduce my girlfriend to friends from my old church. My girlfriend made sure she looked extra cute. We had matching socks, and I wore a shirt that said "Built for Conflict" on the back. We got to the barbecue, my girlfriend made a dessert to share, and I was grilling. My ex-wife saw us and looked beside herself. She eventually came over, tapped my girlfriend on the shoulder and said, "I'm Mary, I'm Michael's wife." My girlfriend said, "Nice to meet you," and held out her hand to shake my ex-wife's. My ex-wife then said, "It's awkward for you to be here and I hope you feel that way." My girlfriend responded, "Okay," and my ex-wife walked off. Later, my ex-wife approached me and said, "This isn't your church anymore, I think you should leave." I said, "Not gonna happen," and kept walking. She went back to her friends, my old friends, and was just distraught. She eventually asked the pastor to ask me to leave. He's my best friend and was the best man at my wedding. He came and talked to me so he could tell her he did. I told him she needed to grow up and I wasn't leaving. He went back to my ex-wife and she was unhinged, trying to say we had to leave. She tried to make it some spiritual thing. Eventually, she gave up and went to the friend she had an affair with and his wife to be comforted. They are still friends, I don't get it. My girlfriend and I just watched and laughed. My ex-wife has been terrible this whole time, and whatever control or narrative she thought she had was destroyed. Everyone watched as she just acted like a witch, and we smiled and waved. In the end, the kids had fun, we got to catch up with old friends, and my ex-wife got put in her place. It was a good day. Side note, my girlfriend is stunning, and several people just stopped with a dumbfounded look on their face when they saw her. It was such a flex to people who want to see me fail. My sister is refusing to allow my wife's assistant's dog at her son's wedding, but she started panicking when I mentioned that I might call my nephew about it. My wife and I live in a different state to my family, however. We often travel back to my home state for special family occasions, birthdays and Christmas for example. My wife is a 22-year military veteran, and when she was discharged it was medically necessary. She was diagnosed with PTSD, anxiety, and depression and has spent several stints in a psychiatric hospital, one for 4 months. She was prescribed an assistance service dog who we have trained under the supervision of a registered organization, and she, we'll call her Daisy, is formally qualified and papered. She goes pretty much wherever we go, including interstate, flying in the cabin of the plane with my wife in an ambulance to the hospital, and also interning with her at psychiatric units. My family are all aware of this and mostly supportive. However, the last time we visited for my niece's 21st birthday, I was questioned by both my sister and my niece about whether Daisy was accompanying my wife to the party. I responded that she was, as my wife really struggles in loud, crowded environments. My niece suggested several reasons why Daisy shouldn't go: loud music, balloons, lots of people, which I assured her Daisy was fine with, and they already know this, being very familiar with Daisy's very calm temperament. My sister then spoke to me after my niece and also said similar things, not outright saying, but heavily suggesting it would be better if Daisy didn't attend. I just said if my wife feels she needs her, she will be attending. Sometimes my wife has been able to do small things without her, but never big events like parties, even shopping centers and restaurants. Daisy comes with her. Anyway, the party came and went. My wife had to take 4 Valium to cope, but managed to sit through the evening with Daisy by her side at her feet at a table. Other people throughout the evening went over to talk to her and most didn't even notice Daisy was there. For myself, I'm used to my wife's conditions and knew that although she was struggling, she was coping and even enjoying talking to people at times. I danced the night away, periodically sitting down beside my wife and checking in. After the party was over, we had a few days at my sister's house where the topic of her son's impending wedding came up. Again, I was asked by my sister if my wife would be taking Daisy. I again said yes, more than likely. Again, it was inferred that the event wouldn't be suitable for Daisy. The tables were really crowded, lots of people. Plus my sister suggested that if my wife didn't have Daisy she would be able to get up and dance. Before my wife had her breakdown, she was not a dancer, and now, with her anxiety, there's no way she'd be comfortable out on a dance floor. I was so taken aback I didn't know how to respond. My wife heard my sister talking to me, and so she suggested she only go to the ceremony and skip the reception to avoid my sister getting stressed out about her dog. My sister snapped there at the same venue, then softened it with, "Of course we want you to come." Both my wife and I felt very uncomfortable and kept reassuring my sister Daisy would be fine as she has been taught to sit under my wife's chair out of the way. It felt like the concerns raised weren't genuine concerns but just a way to feel like Daisy was unwelcome. We flew back home not long after, and this is where I may be ta. We woke up the next morning and the first words out of my wife's mouth were maybe and should just stay home for the wedding and you go by yourself so I don't stress your sister out by taking Daisy. I felt so bad for her. It's taken such a long time for her to feel comfortable in going out in public, and Daisy has been instrumental in that. And now my family were making her feel like she wasn't welcome with her assistant's dog. I reassured her, but later in the day I rang my sister and told her what my wife had said, and that perhaps more care could be taken to make sure my wife wasn't left feeling that her conditions were not considered. I told her my wife had said perhaps she shouldn't go to avoid stressing her out, and my sister just said yes, and to which I replied that she had been prescribed a dog for a reason, and without her dog my wife would likely not go anywhere like she used to. My wife said well, she was better last time she was down, she didn't take her everywhere. I explained that mental health goes up and down. Last time she was doing a bit better, however she'd just been sick and was put on medication that messed with her regular meds and so was only just coming out of that. Also I reminded my sister the last time we didn't really go out apart from to a restaurant, to which Daisy also came. I just feel like I'm constantly trying to prove my wife's medical conditions, even her PTSD has been questioned. As my sister's words, she didn't go to Afghanistan, she even had her best friend question me about it. I'm tempted to tell them some of my wife's horror stories, but I just keep it general so they don't get secondhand trauma. My sister also said that she had to think about other people, and I said why? Does someone have a problem with Daisy attending? And she said her son, my nephew, and his future wife had spoken to her about it. I said well, I'll ring them then, which she hastily replied, no you can't, they spoke to me in confidence. I said I just don't understand what you are trying to achieve. And she said it's not just about you, I have to think of other people. I said well, you wouldn't be asking Nana if she was bring her wheelie walker. And she said actually Nana might be in a wheelchair so I'll have to put her at the end of the table. To which I snapped and said yes, but you wouldn't tell her she's not allowed to bring her wheelchair. And she replied, I didn't say you couldn't bring Daisy. I said back that it was disingenuous to pretend that your questions aren't designed to make us feel like she shouldn't be coming. To which she replied that she couldn't handle the stress I was causing her, and she said goodbye and hung up. Update: I rang my nephew and asked him if he and his bride had a problem with Daisy accompanying my wife to their wedding as my sister was suggesting they did. I said that while my sister hadn't directly said Daisy couldn't go, it was being heavily implied that she wasn't welcome. My nephew seemed kind of confused initially and didn't really answer the question other than to say he hadn't really thought about it. I wondered then if he was being cagey, so I asked him for his total honesty, and he said that when he spoke to his mom, then he stopped and said actually, Mom spoke to me, he also told her he hadn't thought about it. He then said he hadn't even asked his fiancée yet. I told him my anxiety was really high over this and I just needed to know how he felt, and he said I guess I just assumed Daisy would be going with your wife as they're kind of a package deal. I got quite emotional hearing this, and he told me not to worry, that everything must have been blown out of proportion, and so long as my wife was okay. He's always been a really caring kid, which is why I had my suspicions that my sister wasn't being totally honest. Anyway, we chatted some more. He told me to stop crying, otherwise he'd cry at work and all his mates would laugh at him, which made me laugh. He said he'd ring his mom, so I guess poop is going to hit the fan. I have several stress-related conditions because of what I've been through keeping my wife alive, so I really struggle these days with anxiety. I have Minoka and have had a heart attack in the past from stress. I've been having really bad chest pain from this and stomach upset, so although I was tempted to tell my nephew not to call his mom, I need a resolution one way or another. The limbo is too difficult to manage. My sister told our parents she caught me sleeping with her partner. She violated a restraining order and broke into my home, but my parents want me to bail her out. So this all started yesterday when I had a date plan with the guy. He did not show, so I texted the group chat about it. My sister is in this group chat. I'm guessing my sister Sarah told her best friend Jay about it because a few minutes later, Jay texted me to ask if I was okay. I said yes, but I was slightly disappointed since I was excited to try that restaurant. He said he would pick me up at noon the next day so we could eat there. I told him it wasn't necessary, but he insisted, so I agreed, thinking nothing of it. Well, today he took me out as promised. While we were eating, Sarah FaceTimed Jay. When he didn't answer, she called again and again. He answered the fourth call and asked her what was going on. She said she was checking on us and told me to call her later. Later ended up being almost 8 o'clock. Jay and I spent the rest of the day hunting down some collectible dolls we liked and trying different dessert spots along the way. On the way back to my apartment, Jay asked me to change the music on his phone. When I opened it, I saw that my sister had called him about 30 times throughout the day and texted him across multiple apps. Jay had put his phone on Do Not Disturb after lunch, so it made sense that he didn't see those notifications. Once he dropped me off, I called my sister and asked her if everything was all right. She said yes and asked if I had forgotten to call her back sooner. I told her that I was out with Jay, so I didn't get the chance, and I figured it could wait since she didn't call me. She hung up, and a few minutes later I got a call from my mom. She sounded angry and told me that I should be ashamed of myself. I said, "Sure, but why today?" According to my mom, Sarah called her in tears, saying that she had caught Jay and me being intimate in their apartment. I was so confused. I told my mom that I did not have intimacy with Jay, and that I didn't even know they lived together. I asked her to give me a minute and I called Jay, but he didn't answer. Now I am lying on my floor, wondering what the hell is happening and putting off another conversation with my mom. Update. In my original post, when my mom told me that Sarah and Jay shared an apartment, I said, "I didn't even know they lived together." Those were my exact words to her because last I knew, Sarah had a roommate and Jay lived alone. I was right. That's still the case. Jay found out about my date, or lack thereof, and according to him, he was hanging out with a few of his friends, including my sister, and she told him about it jokingly. Another thing is that some people asked why I went out with Jay if I knew my sister liked him. I didn't know. Just because I talk to my sister doesn't mean she talks to me the same way. If I had known, I would have talked to her about it first because I know from experience that my sister is jealous. Anyway, last night was a doozy. Jay called me back. He said he would stay at a friend's because he would feel safer with company. I asked him if anything had ever been romantic between him and my sister. He said the only thing was that he kissed her at midnight at a New Year's party because she was feeling left out. I can't confirm if that is the only thing. He also said that he had never even talked about moving in with Sarah, so he doesn't know why she would say they were living together. After I spoke with Jay, I called my mom again. She still sounded pissed, but this time I could hear my sister crying in the background and my dad yelling to get our asses over there. Ours presumably meant Jay and me. As I told my mother earlier, I didn't have Jay's butt, and I don't like to drive at night, so I told them I would go the next morning. That also gave me time to gather any evidence I could to prove my innocence. Jay even sent me a copy of his lease to prove that he and Sarah do not live together. I went to my parents alone because Jay had work. As soon as I arrived, my parents started yelling at me. Just the usual stuff, that I was disrespectful, but they never expected this from me. "How dare you do this to your sister? You know she already has a hard time. Why make her life harder?" My dad even called me a whore. I just sat there and did the math on how much faster I could finish my grad program and flee the country, or the state. I wasn't very tuned in until my mom told me that if Sarah lost her job because of me, I would need to support her financially until she found another one. That's when I snapped and told them that if they thought I was going to do that, then they were as delusional as my sister. Missing one day of work because of a tantrum over something that didn't happen would not get her fired. My dad said Sarah had missed work to ensure Jay wasn't leaving work early to see me. I found out my sister also told them that Jay was missing a lot of work, so he wasn't taking enough home for their bills. My parents had been sending her rent money for months. I told them it wasn't true and showed them the lease Jay sent, which clearly states the day the lease started and when it ended. It also had his address, which is not the same as Sarah's. My mom brought Sarah out of her room where she had been and told her to explain herself. Sarah said that he probably got that other apartment to be closer to me when he went on supposed business trips. First, Jay is a software developer. I don't know what business trips he would go on. Second, it's a nice way to find out that my sister doesn't even know where I live, because Jay's apartment is almost an hour away from mine. I showed my parents that on Google Maps, and they finally started to believe me. Sarah started crying and calling me a liar. My dad told me that even if what I said was true, I shouldn't have been so hard on Sarah, and that as her sister, I should be helping her when she's having a rough time like this. I told him I wasn't a therapist, but if she ever decided to get help, I would pitch in. I left after that. There was nothing else I needed to say, and there was no point in waiting for an apology. My dad looked uncomfortable, and my mom was too busy consoling my sister to notice me leaving. I haven't talked to them since then. Update 2. Jay got a permanent restraining order against my sister. It took some months and a lot more harassment, but he does have that now. As for why my sister was lying to get money from our parents, I don't know where all the money was going, but I'm pretty sure she lied because she didn't want them to be disappointed in her. A lot has happened, but to sum up, my sister was arrested for violating the restraining order and breaking into my home. My parents were furious with me after I didn't help bail her out. They blame me for her getting arrested and fired from her 3 jobs. Since then, I have not had any contact with my mom or sister. My sister-in-law used my tragic life story as content for her social media and opened the Pandora's box of my abusive family. Now she's in trouble. I'm almost there and have a fraternal younger twin. My parents had us laid after fertility issues and had been told their entire pregnancy I was a boy. Severe gender disappointment, neglect, and copious amounts of emotional/financial/emotional abuse ruined my entire childhood years. I left home at 18 plus my parents' cease/desist order. I haven't spoken to them and don't plan on it. Recently, my estranged twin sent me an email on my work email. The email was a sad vent/rant about how she wished I was around, how she thought our relationship should be because we're twins, everyone says we should be so close, and her demanding invites for our family to my upcoming nuptials. I don't know how she found out had my work email, or was concerned she had some memory issue. When we were younger, my sister realized she was the golden child and could torture me via my parents. She used to hide her things in my room and send my dad to get her stolen stuff back from my tiny room in the basement. Results varied from being padlocked in the basement and only being let out for school or meal times. I had a small bathroom with a sink in the unfinished basement, or physical beatings. My dad and mom both used to hit me. I fell a lot down the stairs or slipped a lot. My twin, when we were 17, shoved me down the basement stairs. I ended up breaking my arm, got a concussion, and needed stitches on a wound on my head, the worst injury I'd ever had. My parents forced me to back up the story of my falling, because they didn't want my sister to get in trouble. My friends at the time helped me leave 2 months later after graduation because my sister enjoyed hurting me. I found out 3 weeks ago that my husband's sister had posted previously about my estranged family on her blog Influencer. She left out a lot. Her followers encouraged her to mend the relationship between me and my family. My twin's emails suddenly became screaming phone calls and threats. So I sought out a restraining order but stopped a cease/desist for my twin because she suddenly stopped the harassment. I thought it was over. I was very wrong. At my husband's parents' house during dinner, she stood up and told me she had a surprise for me. She told me she had driven my sister up, a 26-plus-hour drive, to reconnect and be a family again. I have CPTSD from my twin. Her parents were mortified and took me to the back room, and my husband went straight to calling the police and yelling at his sister. She didn't think the abuses against me were that bad because my twin lied and told her she never laid a hand on me. My twin was out in her car, and when the police showed up, she turned on the waterworks. My sister tried defending her until my husband's mother told the police about the cease/desist order. The police took my twin to the airport for an immediate flight home at my sister-in-law's expense. In the following weeks, my sister-in-law was completely ostracized from her family. My husband and her father ripped her a new one for pulling this stunt. Her mother refused to speak to her because she was so angry someone would try to force a victim to see their abuser. Mother-in-law is a former DV advocate. My husband has agreed to give me the final say on when/ If I'd be alright to hear sister-in-law on her apology. The problem is, I don't want to see sister-in-law ever again. I know she had high hopes of being a godparent or good aunt when we had children, but finding out what she's done cut deep. I don't want to see or speak to her again. Update 1. Sister-in-law is in police custody. To make a long story short, middle brother-in-law had her at his house. His girlfriend witnessed some suspicious behavior, and her having some serious blackouts. They turned out to be illicit substances. Middle brother-in-law was hoping to get her to sober up and get her to a treatment program because she'd die in jail. Well, he's now single. His parents are furious, and we know what happened with sister-in-law in the background. Girlfriend turned her in and moved to her sister's. The entire situation has left brother-in-law utterly shattered and torn, the same as her parents. He told me last night if he knew she was on drugs, he'd have gotten her help long before any of this could have happened. He blames himself and says that maybe it could have been prevented. I told him she made these decisions under the influence or not, and would have to live with the consequences. We went to bed and didn't think anything else of it. Anyway, my estranged twin had a meltdown 2 days earlier. Twin had been taken to a specialized clinic after making some threats. It was the egg donor and sperm donor's fault. They had told my twin that it was entirely her fault I had decided to be child-free. She's the one who threw me down the stairs and tried to kill me. She's the one who called me vicious names and insulted me constantly. She's the one who tried to poison me. I have allergies and also destroyed every relationship I ever had as a teen. It's no wonder I turned out to be such a terrified, traumatized woman who refuses to have children. I was raised with a monster. Except we were both raised by monsters them, but no. They did nothing wrong in their narrative. They were angels to us. Play bitch games, win bitch prizes, enjoy the prize of losing both your kids, one of which is a mess and the other is leaving the country in 8 weeks to escape you, to let you live out the rest of your sad, pathetic lives alone. Good effing riddance. Update 2. My biological parents are in trouble. I told you they tried blaming my estranged twin for all of the abuse I went through as if I'd somehow forgotten how much they abused me and allowed my twin to abuse me as well. And it didn't work. I never reached out. I'm glad I didn't fall for it because half the story was a lie. Yes, the twin is in the hospital because of a meltdown, but our biological parents didn't commit her. Our biological parents abused her for 3 days straight. They withheld food and water, woke her up at all hours to scream at her, and didn't stop even when she begged them to leave her alone. They also refused to let her leave. She didn't get put in a hospital because of her meltdown. She went to urgent care because they had hit or thrown things at her for 3 days off. She was injured. She had a meltdown while she was being seen, which caused her to be taken to the hospital. Her doctor and mental health team reported it and got the police involved. At this point, we have been told that there will be charges against them. Their reputations are ruined. Our lawyer said they'd be lucky if their jail sentence weren't a minimum of a few years. We no longer have anything to worry about with them. We leave in 30 days. We've told my husband's family, and there's a whole mess going on with them learning we are leaving for sure. But our move hasn't been sorted, and we have much to do, so I'm focusing on it. We can deal with this family after, my husband says, fingers crossed.